beyond the hugest honor to be interviewing my buddy, Scott Perkins, a legend in Dentaltown. You know who you remind me the most of is Omar Reed. Do you remember Omar Reed?
I remember Omar Reed.
Yeah, and he was at the top of the game when I got out of school in '87. I don't know how old he is. I think him and Gordon are about the same age, about 80. I'm not for sure on that, but he wrote an article before the internet and texting and instant feedback when you just got a magazine one way at you, a radio, a billboard. And basically he said the 90-second crown prep. But what he meant was that most dentists drill, rinse, look, drill, rinse, look, drill, rinse, look. And what he noticed is that if you just knew what you were doing and committed to the crown prep, the burr's only touching the tooth 90 seconds. So you can prep that thing in 90 seconds or you can take all day. And then everybody twists it around that, oh, my God, how could he be a quality dentist if he's only spending 90 seconds on a crown prep? And you actually wrote the most controversial article of all time in dentistry, and it was called The 15-Minute Root Canal. You had every endodontist ready to go get a 12-gauge shotgun and come down there to Texas. You were the same thing. And so you had a meeting in your office, and I went there, Jerome Smith went there. Who all showed up at that meeting in your office?
Well, first of all, I've got to back up and remind you of how that started. I was on Dentaltown, and everybody was attacking me over this 15-minute endo. And Barry Musicant was on there.
Yeah.
And he said...
I just podcast interviewed him a couple days ago.
Is that right? So Barry said, well, Scott, why don't you invite some townies to Houston, and show them, instead of me telling everybody about it, why don't you let them see what you're doing and then let them come back and tell all of us, because he was obviously skeptical. And I said, okay, I invite you, Barry Musicant. I invite you. And then, of course, I invited you, Farran, and Jerome Smith, and Richard Richetsky, and and Chris Griffin, I think. So, in any case...
Who else? There was a lot of...
Oh, I'm trying to remember.
Do you know what year it was?
Oh, it had to have been, I'm going to think it's like 2001, maybe.
Yeah. I knew it was between 98 and 2001.
Yeah, so that's when you and everybody came. It was great. But Barry Musicant didn't come that time, but he came later on. And so...
well, let me just tell the viewers of what my take was on it. I'll tell you mine and you tell me right or wrong. Basically, what Scott was saying is and so many dentists do to this day. They're using an engine-driven NiTi file, let's say. And say they start top down, they're doing a 45. When they're done with the 45, then they're taking out the file, then they're looking for the next file, then they're putting in the other file. You had like three hand pieces loaded. I mean, your assistant, since while you were doing the 45. They already had the 40 loaded, the 35 loaded. You basically didn't waste a single moment of doing anything. I mean, you basically had your eye on the tooth, and it was just ding, 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 ding. You had two assistants and you. Well, it was six hands just doing an orchestra. The root canal was far great. You could do any root canal on any of my tooth any day of the week, buddy. And I could name 20 endodontists that are great, fantastic. I mean, you were just amazing. But what you were is you were a master of operations and logistics. And I swear every endodontist I know doesn't even have two because they're trying to save money. Well, so they don't want to buy an extra 300 RPM, right. So they're going to spend the rest of their life manually changing it and wasting 2-3 minutes between each files for the rest of their life because they think their labor bill is smaller than their 300 RPM bill.
Well, basically, a root canal procedure for most dentists is a spectator sport for dentalists. They're watching you while you're going crazy trying to switch files out and do everything all by yourself. So a lot of it has to do with the choreography, between the dental assistant. That's part of it. Part of it has to do with knowing exactly what to do. It's a little decision-making tree or an algorithm. So let me back up and pay homage to Omar Reed. I listened to Omar Reed's tapes every day on the way to work when I first graduated from dentistry because Omar Reed would talk.
Was it called Napilli? Was the tape series called Napilli? Napilli? That was his retreat or his retreat in Hawaii, he named it after.
I'm trying to remember. There were several, tapes that I have, but I listened to him. Now, Omar Reed would speak real fast, and he would speak sort of cryptically. And so I had to listen to him over and over and over in order to try to catch what he was saying. But I basically picked up where Omar Reed left off. So I owe a lot to Omar Reed. Now, he influenced my thinking. So basically, when it comes down to a 15-minute root canal or a 15-minute crown procedure, it's not that you can really do all these in 15 minutes. You really can't. But the case I selected was real easy. The canal was a younger person. The canals were real wide. And so I was, I put it on video, and I put the final, in fact, it's on YouTube. You can go watch. If you type in Scott Perkins DDS, you can see that 15-minute crown and the 15-minute endo, and you can see what I was doing. So the choreography was smoother with the 15-minute crown because I had my crack assistant. But then her husband got transferred to another city. And so when I did the 15-minute molar endo, I had to use a dental assistant that I'd only worked with 3 times before. And then I had to make this tape. So this videotape. So that one was a little rougher, but we got through it. So anyway, Omar Reed basically said he would put a video camera down, and if any of us took the time to do this, you put a video camera on what you're doing, and then go back and watch it. And what you're going to see is everybody does a 15-minute crown procedure. It's just that if you time the amount of time that you're actually working on the tooth, the rest is chasing instruments around. You're missing something every time. You have to find packing cord, you have to pull it out, contaminate it. You have to find the scissors. You usually have these crown and bridge scissors, which aren't even they're not even designed for cutting, packing cord, which is like string. So, and then you have to find a dapping dish, and then an eyedropper. All these things you have to find. What we did was we would pre-cut the cord, and we put 4 cords in a little mini Ziploc bag, and then have the hemodent drawn up already in a syringe. So you're not hunting for all these things. We made these what I call speed packs, so that you're prepared every time. That way, say your assistant isn't there and you're going to try to set up for your own procedure. What dentist can set up for his own procedure? That's stressful, right? But if you have a speed pack, anybody can do it. Even a trainee can do it because everything is prepackaged and ready to go. You just pull the pack that's for a crown, or pull the pack that's set up for endo, and drop it down, and you're ready to go. So that was a big part of doing these procedures quick, was just the setup time, making sure everything was there, and then it has to do with the choreography between the dental assistant and the dentist. You're going to have to sit on a Friday or a day off and work with the dental assistant to get your choreography down.
You said YouTube videos. It was Scott Perkins' 15-minute root canal part 1 and 2?
Yeah.
Was there any other YouTube videos? Or was that your...
Yeah, it was a crown procedure video.
What's it called?
15-minute crown procedure.
Okay.
And it's on YouTube too, that part of it. So, of course, the rest of the videotape is, breaks down everything step by step. But now I'm back in dentistry after 8 years being off. And so when I come back, and I'll tell you something that's interesting, how things have changed. So I'm a little bit like Rip Van Winkle that's been asleep, for a long time, and then he wakes up and then steps into the new world of dentistry. And
I'm 53, you're 58. You're gonna have to explain to all the kids out there under 30 who Rip Van Winkle was. That flew right over their head.
Rip Van Winkle was a character that fell asleep for 100 years, and so that when he woke up, the world had changed. And so he's really stepping from 100 years back into a new modern world. Now, things haven't changed all that much, I don't think, in 8 years, but some things have. And the progression, I'll tell you what was interesting was that one of the things I discovered, because I did most of my research on endo, right?
Right.
So what I did was I got extracted teeth from the Harris County Jail in Houston, and I got every endo file set that I could find and purchase, and I put every motion that I could put on a file on these and put these files into teeth. So I used rotational reciprocation, and I used I used linear reciprocation. I used rotary motion and sonic motions, ultrasonic as well as sonic motions. And I retrofitted these files in these different machines that would turn the files, and then tried them out in teeth to try to determine what the most efficient motions and what the most efficient file sets were. So what I found out, oddly enough, was that the most efficient, fastest cutting combination was a K file and a rotational reciprocating handpiece. So when Barry Musicant came down, remember when you and all the townies came for the workshop? Barry Musicant came like a couple of weeks later, and he had his SafeStarter files. So one of the first things I did was, he was showing me his file set, and I was showing him my technique. And one of the things I did was I picked up he had a NiTi file with a flat side, I think it was a 35, and I picked it up and I put it into a rotational reciprocating handpiece that had a hand grip, a hand file gripper on it. And that 35 file went right down a canal faster. It made my eyes pop out. So Barry's eyes were popping out. He looked at it and he said, it doesn't do that every time. I said, Barry, I don't think you ever really put one of your files in the rotational reciprocating handpiece, have you? And so he went back and he broadcast that everywhere, it's because it worked with his file set. Before that, he just used his files by hand. And then he wound up on the front page of Dentistry Today with rotational reciprocation. And then the manufacturers since then, one of the first things I discovered was the Wave 1 file, which they redesigned a NiTi file to go in a rotational reciprocating handpiece. You have to change the geometry of the file because NiTi files, they have to make them purposefully dull if you're going to use it rotationally because it just screws into the canal wall and snaps. But if you use rotational reciprocation, it doesn't do that. But if you use standard geometry, NiTi files, they're not aggressive enough because they had to make them purposefully dull. So what they've done now is they've made, like the Wave 1 file, they've switched the geometry to sharpen the edges of the file. They don't have as many turns in the file. And now it can work and cut rapidly. And it is the most efficient cutting type of geometry is rotational, the motion of rotational reciprocation. And they've made it. It's way safer now to use a nickel titanium file. So it's really changed my procedure. I still use a lot of steel in the beginning because in the beginning, steel files are more flexible than nickel titanium in the smaller diameters, and they're sharper and they cut faster. So I use those in a hand gripper handpiece like an NSK, Endomate, TC. Whereas the nickel titanium files, like the Wave 1, I use in an Endomax, which is a different manufacturer than NSK. It's got a different type of rotational reciprocation, but it's extremely efficient. So then I discovered the Edge files, and this is a company, and it's an endodontist. I can't remember his name right now, but they're about half the cost, maybe even a third of the cost of a Wave 1 file, and they cut just as well. And they're even more flexible than the Wave 1s. So I use those in the Endomax, and now my Endo's even faster than it was before. But a lot of my, discovery was just in refining a very fast access technique that's safe and easy and yields a quality result. Because Barry Musicant, what he told me, he says, hey, Scott, when he came to visit me years ago, he said, I don't have a problem being efficient machining the canals. I do that pretty quick. He says, but I can spend 20 minutes on access, right? So I said, well, Barry, show me how you do access. So he pulls out, I think it's a number 4 round burr, and he starts to do access. So I said, Barry, is that the way they taught you to do access in your endodontic residency? And he says, yeah. And I said, is that the way they teach most endodontists and most endodontic residencies around the United States? And he said, yes. I was man, I was stunned. I said, that's a misapplication of instrumentation. That's like using a butter knife to try to cut down a redwood tree. One of those little round burrs cuts on the end only, and laterally it doesn't have very much length to cut. So it's difficult to control. It requires a lot of focus and concentration. It's just not a good way to do it. So I was using, you remember the GW2 burr from SS White, and there's another geometry. You remember the Samurai Precision Bur that I came up with, and that's sold these days under different names, like the Speedster from Colteen Weldon. Colteen Weldon bought the company I worked with, Cutting Edge Instruments, and then that burr was sold under many different names. But Speedster is the one that and it's the 1158G burr. So that's the most efficient burr for making access when you're cutting through dentin or enamel and dentin to get into to remove the pulp chamber roof. And things like hot bleach. I still use hot bleach. That's the fastest way to go down a canal. Anyway.
Why back to Edge Endo out of Albuquerque, the endodontist Charles Goodis. How come his files are half the cost? How does he do that?
You got me. I'd like to know that myself. Not only that, but the metallurgy in his nickel titanium is like no metallurgy I've ever seen. In a regular nickel titanium file, if you put your finger on it and you flex it, it bends back to where it came from. And on one of Goodis's Edge Endo files, if you touch the file, it will bend and it'll deform. It'll stay that way, but not like steel does. Steel is kind of like bent and kinked, whereas this is still very flexible. You just brush it with your finger and it will bend. So it'll. Do
you think people pay twice as much for their files just because they don't know, or they don't like it for some reason?
Oh, I absolutely guarantee you that. That no one knows about the Edge Endo files.
Is it because they sell direct and they don't have a sales force?
It's because these big monopolies, they have all the marketing and the opinion leaders, and they're able to project. They're able to market. There's all kinds of great products that you can't listen to a lot of the opinion leaders because they're bought off. So you have to go test this stuff yourself in order to find what's good. I'll tell you one of the best sources. And I'm trying to remember. It's been a while since I've looked at it, but there's I think it's the U.S. Army, and they've got
right.
These guys, see, they're not bought off by anybody. Read their stuff.
Yeah, what's the name of that deal? I
don't remember.
I ask them every 5 years if I can, print a column by them in Dentaltown or put on their website or whatever. But they're government military. I think the U.S. military hires more dentists than anybody on earth. I think they have like.
Well, the incredible thing about it is, usually they're not very efficient, right? But on the other hand, when they test products, they're not biased because no one's paying them an honorarium. So when they're testing these things, it's kind of like me. When I first discovered, when I put a K file in rotational reciprocating handpiece, I go, look at me. I'm a genius. I discovered this. And I thought, wait a minute, Scott, rotational reciprocation has been around forever, and so have these K files. People knew, someone before you obviously knew how these things worked, yet no one's using it because who's going to pay someone to talk about a K file that doesn't have a patent on it, right? But if you're in the beginning of your endo, instead of hand filing, you might get a length with a hand file by hand, but right after that, put it in a rotational reciprocating handpiece and watch what happens. Your endo will go blazingly fast. It's just incredible. It's incredible how fast you can machine out a canal with a K file with rotational reciprocation. And then right behind that, by the time you get up to a number 15 file, you can go to a number 20, either wave 1, or I believe the Edge is called the X1 file. They knock off everybody's files, and I think it's the X1 is the knockoff of the Wave 1. Now, I haven't had a chance to do it, and these are by the way, they're number 20 their number 20 file is a .06 taper. So the first thing I thought of was, wow, the taper's a little big for me, because I always like to keep things small. I never wanted to file the canals larger than they really needed to be filed, because I didn't think that was there's no reason to do that. As soon as you get them large enough to obturate, that's when you should obturate them, and as soon as your apical gauge is right. So I thought a .04 would be better, and I recently found out that Barry Musicant has manufactured a file that's nickel titanium, that's flat-sided, that's a .04, that goes in a rotational reciprocating handpiece, which is what I don't know if he remembers this, but that's what I told him to do in my office right after you came for the workshop, when he came the next 2 weeks. At that point, he had his money invested in that file set, and he had steel files with flat sides, and then he gets up to a number 35, which is a beautiful file that he has. He had 2 nickel titanium flat-sided files. Now he has a kit that's designed and would compete. And I'm thinking, theoretically, this is going to be better than the Wave 1 or the Edge. And so I've just recently, I've only been back in practice here for about 3 months. And so very quickly I'm gathering up information. And my endo, I do 3 times the amount of endo that I did before. The average dentist does about 9 endos a month, and I'm doing about 30 of them. So I'm somewhere between an endodontist and a GP when I'm doing endo, and just loving it. I mean, it's going better than it ever did. And so I don't know. I'm loving being back in dentistry.
Well, that's awesome. So you took off when you were 52, and you said 6 years. 8 years you took off, or 6?
It's about 8 years.
Well, that's good. That you went out and did something else. So what all are well, basically, again, the takeaway lesson for Scott Perkins, and I've been a student of you for 20 years. I mean, you're lighting the world on fire, whether it's Crown and Bridge, Endo, whatever, is what you brought to my mind and so many of my friends' minds and so many people in Dentaltown is, if Einstein said you do the same thing every day, expecting a different result, you're crazy. And what you do is you spend a lot of time up front thinking out every little step. Your tray setups were like OCD. I mean, you thought out the whole tray setup. I mean, a lot of times the assistant will go in the room and she'll have a tray and she'll throw a little this, little that, little that. I mean, you were just meticulous on every detail, so that when you actually started working on the patient, I mean, it was like watching Beethoven play the piano. I mean, you knew where every key was, you knew where every note was. It was a symphony. And while you were doing it, we're all standing there around the operatory just looking at each other like, damn. I mean, there's not one movement you didn't think about for a really long time. I almost think of you as dentistry's operations and logistics. Because it didn't matter if you were doing a root canal or a crown or a filling, you just thought of the steps. And Gordon used to talk about this 25 years ago, that, well, if slow setup, they had, when composites were coming out, they had, fast set, slow set. He said, well, the fast set sets up in a minute and the slow set sets up in 3 minutes. I mean, really, are you going to waste 2 minutes on every damn time you use this product from age 25 to 65 for 40 years? And dentists just don't think like that. I mean, I can't even get them to get an extra operatory. I mean, the front office, they got a toothache, emergency, something. They want to bring the body in. They want to say, well, just come on down. They want a conversion rate, because
right.
The average office, for every 100 calls, maybe a third of them get converted to an appointment. But half the time, the receptionist is like, I don't have a chair to throw this person in. And then I'm looking at the overhead, and it's like, well, how do you have 24 to 28% for labor? How do you have 35% for the doctor? I mean, we got 55 cents of the dollar is going to people, maybe 8 to 10% lab, 4 to 6, 7% supplies, and we don't have a chair? Are you kidding me? A chair is not even a percent. And then the dentist gets it, and then you say, well, it doesn't matter that you diagnose 100 cavities. If you only convert 38 people to getting treatment, you needed more time on trying to get more people to convert to treatment, and they'll just sit there. I mean, and they don't have a chair, or they're doing the filling, and they're For the conversion rate, that they'll need intro camera. Well, the hygienist is using the intro camera because I'm saving money on intro cameras. I got money for payroll in the first 15.
Yeah.
Oh, don't she's using it. I'll forget. I'll just tell you. I'll just mumble some Latin and Greek in your ear, and then you do that, and then they don't convert. They don't schedule. They're not getting it done. So you're not a good doctor. You're not a good doctor when you see disease and you can't get the decay out. And then they'll take 40 courses on bonding agents and have big long debates of what's better, amalgam and composite. I'm like, dude, what do you care what's better about amalgam and composite?
And more megapascals of bonding strength than the next one was. I had a couple. This is funny. I won't tell you what group it was, but I had them test a couple of materials, and I think it was. I'm trying to remember the name of the two materials. But it was a bonding agent from Parkel, and it was with a buildup and from gosh, I can't remember what it was. But so they said, we've got bad news. They said it's only got so many megapascals, and something else had more megapascals. And I said, well, let me ask you a question. How many megapascals does amalgam have? And he said 0. I said, well, they used amalgam for build-up material for 100 years. I'll take the 40 megapascals or whatever it happened to be. It's good enough for me.
And the same dentist anally whining about how many megapascals. He doesn't even remove the decay, period, on 2 out of 3 cavities he diagnoses because he won't think about the case presentation. He won't get an intro camera for every room. He won't get digital x-rays so he can print out the x-ray in an 8x10 and draw on it. And then he'll get on Dentaltown and argue with John Kank until 3 o'clock in the morning about bonding techniques. And I'm like, why do you even care? If you could only talk a third of the people and to remove the decay, I mean, I'd rather all decay was removed by every dentist on every patient and they packed it with IRM and temporized it. At least you got out all the infection.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? I mean, you got out all the infection. And so you're just one of those guys. And I assume you just think about it on the way to work at night.
Well, let me tell you how it happened. Here's how it happened. You remember when the Reader's Digest?
Oh, yeah. Eric.
Okay, now that's how I got to know you, right? You remember this?
Yeah. Tell them the story.
Okay, what happened was I came home one day and my wife hands me this Reader's Digest magazine, and on the front she said, "You might want to look at this." So I look, and it says, "How dentists rip us off" on the front cover of Reader's Digest. So I'm like in a state of shock. Now, this is back when the internet was brand new. Most people really weren't on it.
And to the younger kids, there's a lot of people that will listen that's under 30. They probably never heard of Reader's Digest, but Reader's Digest was on every grandma's end table in America. It was the magazine.
Dental office. It was in the reception room of every dental office.
And right? And I think one of its key favors was it was smaller. It was only like 4 inches by 6 inches.
And it was the most widely distributed piece of print media in the world.
Yeah, it was awesome. I grew up reading it.
So, and I did too, and conservative people did, and so is known to be conservative. So, I wondered what was going on, and I did my own personal investigative piece of journalism on it, and found out it was fraudulent. And so I took my findings and I sent them to all the dental societies by email in the country. And I sent it to you, I guess. So you published it in your newsletters before you had the magazine. Before you had Dentaltown magazine, you had a Dentaltown newsletter. And parts of it got published in Dental Economics, and I guess Woody Oaks published part of it. Well, later on after that, I was making lots of money in dentistry, but I had 6 kids and I wasn't making as much. And so I decided I was going to sentence myself to work on Fridays, every Friday, thinking about how I was going to increase my income, my dental practice. And I got a statue of the thinker like this and set it down. And so I thought every Friday for about a year. Nothing much happened. And but then I decided, I pushed my dental practice as far as I could. I said, I think I'm going to try to invent something. So I invented the gun rack. Remember the gun rack?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so
I had it in my office.
Okay, so the gun rack holds all these different guns that mix, the base catalyst materials, like the bite train wash material and the basic curl for your temporary, and the even build-up material and even temporary cement. So I was trying to sell it, and I didn't have very much success. But you had started your website, and you and Judith had started your website for selling items, and so I thought, well, I don't know if I'll be able to get in a catalog, but I've talked to the friends. Maybe they'll put it in their online catalog. So I called up, and Judith answered the phone, and she said, "What do you have?" And I said, "Well, it's an invention." She, "What is it for?" I said, "It's for being more efficient in crowns." And she said, "Why don't you write an article about efficiency for doing crowns?" And so I said, "Okay." And then after I hung up the phone, I said, "Man, I'm going to look stupid. What do I know about efficiency?" And to tell you the truth, I wasn't efficient at that point like I became. I was real. I ran a very high-end practice that had high production and so forth, and I've always been efficient, but not like I came to be when I was asked to write that article. So I sat down and I thought it out, and on paper, theoretically, and I calculated up all the set times of the materials. I switched things, and around the assistant would do some things, I would do some others, and so I said, theoretically, a crown could be done in 15 minutes, and I thought, man, that can't be true. There's no way. Let me rethink this. And so I rethought. I said, no. I said, theoretically, it could be done. So I told my assistant, May Handson, I said, May, theoretically, a crown could be done in 15 minutes. And she said, you're crazy. I said, well, maybe, but let's try it. So we got the timers out. And the second time we tried it, it was 15 minutes. And so I said, man, no one's going to believe this. And so I said, I'm going to have to make a videotape. So then I made the videotape. And so the article came out in your magazine, Dentaltown. And, I went to a photographer. You at that time, you would dress up in like an astronaut costume, and you would do stuff like that. So I said, well, I'm going to do it too, because Howard does it. So I got the cowboy outfit, right? And so I did that, and I wound up, and I knew, since I was the editor and the publisher of my little city's newspapers in Houston, the city of Southside Plays, which is a small incorporated city that's within Houston city limits, I knew how difficult it is to publish things and how stressful it is. I said, I'll lay out the front cover, and maybe they'll be stressed, and they'll put it on the front cover, which is exactly what happened. So that was the first real controversial article that I wrote. And I thought things through. That's the first time I thought things through like you're saying. And then that worked so well. Later on, I thought, what will I do next? And I thought, I know, I hate endo. And so I said, endo, gives me nightmares. When I see an endo on the schedule, I don't feel, especially if it's before lunch or before the end of the day. It's just, a feeling in your stomach that's not good. So I thought out endo. And then I wrote the next article. And so that's how I became efficient, actually, because of you and your magazine.
It's funny about how so much of success is counterintuitive. And, a controlling social animal, top down, 400-pound gorilla down is why we make organizations like Pope, Cardinal, Priest, General, Colonel, whatever. And, one of the counterintuitive things is, to avoid controversy, because you're a social animal and you all got to get along. But whenever you do something controversial, I think as about 10 people are quoted for originating. I don't care what you say about me, just get my name right.
Yeah.
But it's so funny how you write a magical piece and they don't talk about it. But you say something controversial and it goes viral. And you were the first gone viral for Dentaltown ever on that 15-minute root canal. I mean, I had hate mail from endodontists. I mean, there were endodontists that wanted to run me up a flagpole. And I started learning that you could go talk for 8 hours, but you just say one colorful, off-the-cuff joke that offends at least 20% of the people, and it'd be the buzz of the entire convention. Yeah. And so I just started collecting every off-color dental joke you could imagine, throwing it out there, knowing that the more you cringed, the more you would write letters and tell everyone, because back then everybody's like, what was the name of that guy? You know what I mean? So and you just, I mean, you're like Miley Cyrus. Remember that girl that swung on a ball chain?
Oh, hopefully I'm not like Miley
No,
Cyrus.
no. But I'm saying when Miley Cypress swung on that ball
Yeah.
and licked the chain or something like, or twerked or whatever the heck. I mean, I was thinking about all those spots on all those newspapers and CNN and all those deals, and if that would have been a 30-second commercial, a 60-second commercial, a
Yeah.
2-minute commercial. I mean, the woman literally got, I would say, at a minimum, $100 million of free advertising because she shook her butt and twerked or something. And you know, I mean, and you've seen rock stars do it all the time. Remember when we were little, Alice Cooper? You knew he was just trying to out crazy his act from the year before. He lives up the street. I'm in Phoenix. Yeah, I mean, it's just that I learned right out of the gate that if you can throw an article that 20% of the dentists violently disagree with, publish that every time you can.
Yeah, I knew when I wrote it that it was, and I try to put a disclaimer in the article. I said, no, I'm not suggesting that you do this in 15 minutes. I'm not saying that you can do it every time. I'm just saying if you're very organized, that it is possible, and put it on videotape. In fact, I got invited to speak to Creighton University. And the reason I did, Higginbotham was the head of, Dr. Higginbotham was the head of continuing education at Creighton. And because in the Reader's Digest article, Mr. Eckenbarger, the Pulitzer Prize-winning author that wrote that fraudulent article, he went to Creighton, and then they claimed, the Creighton people claimed that he twisted what they said in order to support his article, which was damaging to dentists, right?
Okay, but go back, because again, I'm 53, you're 58. There's half the people listening to this have no idea what you're talking about because they're. Tell them the gist of the article.
Here's how it went. A Pulitzer Prize-winning author, William Eckenbarger, was commissioned to write this article to test how honest dentists were. So he went and presented himself to 50 different dental offices around North America to give him an opinion of the condition of his mouth. And in the article, there were these 5 good guy dentists. And one of them was a former dean of a University of Kentucky. And they were the guys that were, and one of them was Mr. Eckenbarger's own dentist up in Hershey, Pennsylvania. I don't remember all their names, but they deemed that his mouth was healthy and needed very little dental work, if any. I
think the dean said 0.
And so, yeah, that's right. He was an irascible character. But anyway, then he went to all these other dentists, and what the article found was that all these other dentists wanted to do 2 crowns or 3 crowns and even a full mouth reconstruction, and basically painted them as a bunch of quacks that were just wanted to make money. So the conclusion of the article is it doesn't do any good. They call the American Dental Association, and the American Dental Association says, well, we recommend you get different opinions. And the Reader's Digest, William Eckenbarger says, I got different opinions, and that didn't help. I was getting ripped off. Dentists were trying to rip me off everywhere I went. So I read this article, and I was in a state of shock. So I go to the internet, which was new, and it was dial-up. There was no such thing as, cable broadband internet. So I looked at the article, which is almost identical, except for one thing. Mr. Eckenbarger's x-rays were on the internet. And I looked at them, and I saw these crowns with these big overhanging margins. So I was able to find, they listed the name of the so-called good guy dentist and what cities they were from. So I just looked them up and called them up. And so I called one of them, say his name was Dr. Jones. Dr. Jones, this is Dr. Perkins from Houston. I just read the article, how dentists rip us off, and I'm very shocked. And the doctor would say, oh, yes, shocking, very shocking. And I said, well, I'm just really curious about Mr. Eckenbarger, about the condition of his mouth. He said, oh, Mr. Eckenbarger was a great patient, great oral hygiene, just the kind of patient you want in your practice. And I'm thinking, actually, I want the kind of patient that actually needs some dentistry, not someone that has perfect health. But it's nice to see those with perfect health. In any case, I said, well, Mr. Eckenbarger, I understand, had a lot of crowns in his mouth. Did he have a lot of crowns? And the doctor would say, well, yeah, he did. And I'd say, what condition were those crowns in? And the doctor would say, excellent. I'd say, really? Excellent. He'd go, yeah. Are you sure? Excellent. Oh, yes. I'd say, well, come on now. Excellent, good, above average, average. And he would repeat, excellent. And then I would say, well, you know, Dr. Smith, did you know that Mr. Eckenbarger's x-rays are posted on the internet? And he would say, no. I'd say, well, they are. And I'm looking at them right now from my office in Houston, and those crowns look like they fit like boots on a rooster. And the doctor got real quiet. He said, well, the margins were kind of thick. And I said, now, wait a minute. I just got through asking you over and over again, and you repeated multiple times they were excellent. Like, what's going on? So I did this to all 5 doctors. And I found out that, and they all, you know, tripped up the same way as the first one did. And, you know, and when I researched their backgrounds, they all had ties to managed care. Like the former dean of the University of Kentucky Dental College, his only current form of employment was MetLife's National Managed Care, chairman of MetLife's National Managed Care Program. And he hadn't practiced dentistry in a long time. He was affiliated with, with MetLife. And so I asked some of my patients who work with an investment firm upstairs, I said, check out and see who's sitting on the Reader's Digest board of directors. And there were like 4 MetLife executives on the Reader's Digest board of directors. And so the article was, obviously highly inaccurate. When I talked to his own dentist had told him that he was, if memory serves, that he was a candidate for full mouth reconstruction. So they were blasting the dentist. I mean, he had the kind of mouth you could have said, look, these crowns need to replace, or you could use a full mouth reconstruction. And his x-rays showed that. Now, they took the x-rays down, but not before I downloaded them.
Do you still have them?
I probably do on an old hard drive. I'd have to look for them, but I could. Oh my God!
You do upload them on Dentaltown on that article because we posted it. We talked about that.
They published it, Reader's Digest, and put it out there. I'm assuming that there's no legal problem with republishing that.
And it's probably before HIPAA anyway, so they'd be. But hey, Scott, But back to the 15-minute endo, then you did the 15-minute crown, and now I don't know. I'm thinking there's probably
and rapid anesthesia.
Yeah, there's probably 15,000 CADCAMs, I imagine, in the 125,000 dental. So 125,000, 10% would be 12,500. We passed that unit. It's probably 50,000. Do you think CADCAM is making people go faster and more efficient, or not? Because a lot of dentists wonder about that because it's pricey. It's $1.50 to buy one of those things. Do you think it leads to faster, easier, higher quality, lower cost dentistry?
Are you talking about a CEREC machine? Or are you talking about
CEREC or E4D
digital impressions? Well, when I went out of dentistry, I taught workshops. I still teach workshops. Dentists would come with a CEREC machine, and they say, how do I make this more efficient? And I would tell them, you need to sell your CEREC machine. And I had dentists that sold their CEREC machine back then, and their production went up. And the reason why is because the dentist is bogged down being a lab tech, and you can't really be a lab tech and make money. It can't be done. And I also said this, I'm not bashing CEREC. Someday we'll all own CEREC machines when the technology is improved enough where it works very efficiently. And it's not, the CAD-CAM is some good stuff. It's really accurate. It's got some quality to it from everything I can tell and what I've heard these days. So digital impressions, to take a digital impression, though, there's a lot of advantages to having one. But it's time consuming to take one compared to snapping an impression. And remember, I'm just back. I've just been back, maybe 3 months. And I'm in a practice with.
But you did more dentistry. How old you graduated in '84?
Yeah.
And I was '87. But from '84 to when you were so you're 58. You take out 6 years or 8 years?
Excuse me?
How many years did you take off?
8.
So basically, you practiced 30 years.
I think it was maybe 24 years. I'm not sure exactly.
24 years, and you probably did twice as much dentistry as the average dentist did in 24 years.
I did a lot of dentistry.
Yeah,
and when it comes to endo, when it comes to endo, these teeth were extracted teeth that I worked on, but I would literally work on extracted teeth from the time the sun came up to the sun until well after the sun went down. In fact, my wife Mary Jane said, "Scott, you're worrying me. You look a little bit like Jack Nicholson, The Shining, because I'm bent over the stereo microscope."
Was she in that picture you sent me just a little bit ago?
No. That's my staff, my new staff here in El Paso.
Okay, I wondered who that was. There's no family, none of your 6 kids.
A great staff.
But yeah, I say it all the time. But Warren Buffett, the only person who became one of the richest people in the world, a billionaire. He says when he studies companies to look at them, he says he almost thinks that this 95% of CEOs spend half their time trying to figure out how to raise their overhead. And dentists are always thinking, I'll be successful if I just spend a lot of money and I'll buy some silver bullet. And then they'll talk about, well, if you buy this laser, I can do a frenectomy in like 30 seconds. It's like, a frenectomy? Is a frenectomy even 0.01% of your revenue? So you're going to spend $75,000 so you can save $1 on a 15 scalpel. I see dentists buying CADCAM, and they used to take a rubber impression and send it to a lab, and now they're in the operatory for 3 hours making a crown. It's like so you spent $150,000 to be a glorified lab tech. Well, why did you go to 8 years of college to be a dentist? Why didn't you go to Crown and Bridge Lab School for 2 years?
I think you can do it, but I think what you have to have is a well-trained assistant who becomes your in-house lab tech, and then it makes a lot of sense.
But they're control freaks. They won't delegate. I do that. I do that with mine. I mean, I numb, I prep, I leave. And when I come back, it's all done. I run a cement. But they're too controlling. They get mad when their hygienist talk to the patient. Yeah. They don't even let their hygienist have an internal camera because she said this tooth over here is completely broken and needs a crown. And then he tells her if she talks again, he's going to fire her, and she's not a doctor. I mean, it's just crazy. I
rely on those hygienists to do a lot of the communication, or most of the communication. I think that's invaluable. But I agree. I think here's one thing, Howard. As far as spending a lot of money, it depends. I mean, what I found was when I started testing products, I would find some product, like the K-file. I found out the fastest thing. Most nickel titanium doesn't start till a number 20 size anyway. So you're using. I mean, the hard part of the root canal is not when you go to finish the canal out. It's in the beginning stages. When you're getting after you get access and you're trying to negotiate the canal. That's the hard part. And you're going to use steel to do that. And every root canal starts with steel. So I'm just using it in a rotational reciprocating handpiece and making sure that I've got a well that holds a lot of irrigant in order to do the root canal. So there's a lot more detail. I could talk about all the aspects of endo if you'd like to speak about more aspects of it. But there's more. You should write an updated version of the 15-minute root canal and the 15-minute crown for Dentaltown. Yeah, I would love to. That would be classic, and it'd be epic. Doing just that, and I've got, you were talking to me. This is funny. I had a new invention that I thought this one was really going to catapult me, and so I spent a lot of time trying to find out how to manufacture this invention. It fits in a latch type handpiece, and it is made by a Swiss screw machine rather than a CNC machine. And I found out that it was when I got back into dentistry that it's already been produced and even patented before I even thought of it, and is distributed by Ultradent. And so I want to write an article on how, but they manufacture it for a different purpose. So I'd love to do that. I'd love to introduce this new product that really helps in endo. I don't have any financial interest in it at all because the product that I had that I developed and thought I had invented first, someone else has already invented. So I'd love to do that.
Well, if you ever want to have a hands-on course, I got the whole setup facility in Phoenix and Vegas.
That'd be wonderful.
So yeah, if you ever want to do a hands-on course, in fact, you should do that during the next county meeting. During the next county meeting, we should have a hands-on course. Would you want to do it on endo or crown and bridge? You know how many people would show up just because they've been your raging fan on Dentaltown since 1998? They would just want to show up and just hug you and talk to you. I mean, it'd just be like a family reunion.
I miss everybody. Talking to you is fantastic for me. You just can't even imagine.
Well, what you should do a hands-on during the townie.
Oh yeah, I would love to.
Oh, but
just tell me when I'm on it.
Yeah,
it'd be great. Yeah, but I've got an updated endo. This endo course is updated, and it's less complex by far than it was before. It's way simplified.
Email me Howard at dentaltown.com and we'll set it up. Scott, I want you to go. An advantage you have and I have at our age is attitude is everything. Attitude determines your aptitude, your altitude. I mean, it all starts with an attitude. And I hear these young kids talking, and they self-talk so many negative things. Well, I hate endo. I suck at endo. I don't like endo. I don't want to do endo.
Right.
And I tell people, I don't care if I'm sitting at a table and I got 3 enemies across the table, that just freaking want to kill me. I don't care about that. What I fear is when the enemy's living in your own head between your ears. What would you tell these kids who are sitting there telling themselves, I hate endo. I don't like endo. In fact, some of them say, I don't like surgery. I don't even like blood. It's like, dude, you became a doctor. I mean, what do you think you're going to work on? An Intel machine, an iPhone? So obviously you started off knowing that humans were filled with blood and guts.
Right.
And now you got out and you're telling me that you want to work on iPhones. So what would you tell the younger kids who are self-talking they hate endo?
I would tell them the same thing that the Wizard of Oz told the Scarecrow and the Tin Man and the Lion, that you already have a heart, you already have courage, you already have a brain, and you can do it. You just need to learn how. And everything is hard when you don't know how to do it. Once you know how to do it, it's easy.
Oh my God! I can't believe you said the Wizard of Oz, because 2 nights ago, on my birthday, August 29th, I treated myself to the play Wicked. Have you heard of that play?
Oh yeah.
Did you go see it?
I did. I missed it. I just got here and I saw it. Was going through downtown.
I've lectured in New York so many times. I've gone to so many Broadway plays I can't even count them. And truthfully, at least half the time you kind of leave it intermission because you're yawning, you're bored, you got a lecture tomorrow.
Yeah, I fall asleep.
Wicked. I mean, at the very end, you jumped out of your chair for a standing ovation. I mean,
that's killing me.
It's the single greatest play I ever saw in my life. It was just classic all the way from the beginning to the end. But so what else would you tell these kids?
Well,
they're self-talking. They're self-talking. They're not going to pull a tooth. They're not going to do molar endo. They're not going to place an implant. And I'm going, well, you're not going to do it if you keep telling yourself that all day. So now, is Sarah your oldest? Has she had are you a grandpa yet?
You know what? You wouldn't believe this. About 3 days ago, her boyfriend flew to El Paso and read me this letter asking for permission to marry my daughter. And you ought to see this letter. You wouldn't believe it. He's an Army Ranger. He's got a degree from West Point, toured Iraq, and then he got a degree from Northwestern. So I'm thrilled. I mean, he's the nicest kid. So
let's say Sarah just got out of dental school and she's getting married to this Class A guy, and you hear her not going to fight an enemy in Iraq or something like that, but the enemy's in between her head, and she says, Dad, I hate endo. I don't like endo. And how would you try to get her to change that around in her head?
Right now the guy I work for is like 2 years older than my oldest daughter, Sarah. and he's an ambitious young man. He's got 5 offices, and I'm the oldest guy in any of these offices, right? And so the rest of them are young, and some of them have just been out a year or two. But he's cherry picked some really quality kids, right? But like anyone else, they don't have a lot of experience in this endo, right? And so that's one of the things I did. I go to an office where someone's having trouble, and I've already given a workshop to this group. And so, as far as, dentistry, I mean, who taught us anything in dental school? Did the dental instructor ever teach you anything where you went, or did you just show them what you did after you did it? It's kind of like in medicine, watch one, do one, teach one. That you didn't get a lot of instruction. I think as far as, we as dentists, you have to get out there. You're not going to learn unless you try. At least try. Don't refer it, try it. You can always refer it if you can't tackle it, right?
Well, they're always going to say, well, I think the endodontist would do it better than me. It's like, well, when did he do his first root canal? So what, the endodontist was born an endodontist? I mean, didn't the endodontist have to do his first root canal?
You got to start somewhere.
I know, and I was so lucky at UMKC because in the oral surgery department, it had 3 legends: Matt Horgan, Charlie White, and Brett Ferguson. And you would come back to them and you'd say, I can't get it out. And he'd look at the clock and he'd say, well, how long have you been on it? I'd say 5 minutes. He'd go, 5 minutes. Come back and tell me what's going on in 25 minutes. And I mean, and then you come back 25 minutes and they'd roll their eyes. They'd come back and they'd just take a popsicle stick. And he'd say, hell, I couldn't even pull that too. That flap's so small. He goes, if I couldn't pull it. It takes just the same amount of time for a flap twice as long. Then peel that baby back like a banana until you can see some white mandible. Then spend another 25 minutes trying to get it out. And I mean, it was just so amazing. I love the oral surgery department the most. Those 3 oral surgeons, I swear to God, they're like uncles to me.
You just reminded me. We did it. Ben Taub is a hospital in Houston, and that's where we did a rotation to take teeth out. And so the resident oral surgeon, I'm trying to get these teeth out, and they're just a bunch of roots. It looked like trees, sticking up from a man-made lake. And it was Dr. Chin, and I said, and Dr. Chin is sitting back like this with his feet kicked back. I said, Dr. Chin, can you help me? I'm, having a little trouble here. And he says, lay a flap. And I'm thinking, flap. I think I saw that in one of those dental books somewhere. And next thing I know, I had a scalpel in my hand, and I got the teeth out. Right? He wasn't going to help me get those teeth out. So I wound up taking out a lot of teeth, just because I dove in and did it. And to be fair, there's some incredible dental instructors. We had one named Clyde Coe, and Clyde Coe, he would do exactly that. He would sit down and he would show you actually how to do something in the clinic, which, everybody loved Clyde Coe. He was always voted the student's favorite instructor because of just that. He would take you under his wing and show you how to do stuff. And then he would pat you on the back too after you did it.
I had a couple students from local dental school last week, and they were in there, and I was pulling wisdom. That's still my favorite procedure. I mean, I have to be honest. I mean, if I could only do one procedure, it'd just be wisdom tooth. I have to admit that. And number 2 probably be molar endo. But they said to me, they go, well, how did you pull those? You didn't look in the mouth. I mean, you didn't even look in the mouth. And I said, well, how would Stevie wonder? I mean, I said I feel the elevator in between those teeth, and I said it's by feel. Right. I mean, I look back and feel, but I don't have to stare at the moving tooth. You're just feeling it, and you're feeling it, and you just pop that baby out.
It's just like endo. These guys have a $30,000 stereo microscope. But what can you do with it? You can get access and you can locate a canal, all right? But after that, it's a blind procedure. You put the file in the canal, it's blind from there on. There's no sterile microscope for that. There's nothing but feel when you're doing endo. So, but you're right about, especially, I'm doing a lot of these. I really didn't do them when I was in Houston, the 2 Houston Center. I was in a high-rise building, and I didn't have kids or teenage kids or college-age kids when I was there. But where I am now, I've got a lot of them. So I find myself doing exactly what you're talking about. I'm taking out a lot of third molars, and these impacted third molars and the maxilla. You don't even see them half the time. You're finding them with your elevator by feel.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's you got a lot of senses, and feel is a huge one in dentistry. Just
Tactile sense.
Yeah, tactile sense. Well, hey, dude, we are out of time, and I just want to tell you that you were so much of a legend in my early formative years. Thank you so much for spending an hour with me today. I just think, and thank you for all you do for dentistry, and thank you so much for spending an hour with me today.
Okay, great. See you.